Hello. Today I'm reading the third chapter of my book, Philosophizer's Bible. I'm going to talk a little bit about it as well and respond to a comment that was made on my first video by one of my former students, Louise, who is now doing a PhD at Cambridge University. And her thesis topic is the moral philosophy of Immanuel Kant. I hope I've got that right, Louise. It was a great comment. It could have been taken as a bit of an insult. She said, how did I become this vivacious, disgruntled pariah figure? When did it start? When did it happen? When did the disillusion set in? And actually it started very early on. Reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance in 1974. There was a radical philosophy group at Birkbeck College at that time. I know I was never a Marxist. I kind of half listened to their complaints about academic philosophy. And by the time I got to Oxford and I looked at the antics of academic philosophers, I knew I wasn't one of them. I didn't belong with that crowd. So I kept to myself. As I said in my reply, my most enjoyable experience was singing and playing the guitar in a local pub, the Monk's Retreat, just in case there's anyone watching this video who remembers that place. It was a fantastic place. A cellar, and the only way to eject drunks was to push them up a spiral staircase, so that often didn't happen. Every kind of low life populated that place. Anyway, enough of reminiscences. I'm going to read chapter 3. It's called The Two Tribes. It's got nothing to do with Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And I'll explain very quickly who the two tribes are. Okay. Here is a story which you may treat as a parable. There are two tribes who live on opposite sides of a river. The tribes are the philosophers and the philosophizers. The river is called philosophy. The philosophers and philosophizers refuse to talk to one another or have any dealings with one another, yet they fish from the same river. To avoid disputes, members of each tribe keep to their own side, never once crossing the imaginary line that divides the river in half. Their mutual suspicion and hatred is such that they refuse to look one another in the eye, even when they are feet away, knee-deep in water, plying their nets. So, I will put my point as succinctly and unambiguously as possible. Philosophizers don't ratiocinate. We don't interpret. We express. We may be after the same fish as you, but what we do with our fish when we've caught it, how we prepare and cook our fish and eat it, is very different. Frankly, the thought of what you do with your fish makes us want to throw up. No doubt you feel the same way about us. Tant pis. In case you haven't already realized, this is intended as a work of rhetoric, which expresses my views about philosophy, and which also shows things that may be of interest to students of philosophy, and their teachers also. It is not a quote-unquote philosophy book. It belongs at a different place on the bookshelf. Booksellers and librarians take note. If you find anything in here that looks like ratiocination of a logical or analytic kind, or interpretation along the lines of the tradition running from Hegel's phenomenology through Husserlian phenomenology, existentialism, Freudian-inspired postmodern thought, or whatever, you should ask for your money back. I argue my points the way any writer argues, but not the way philosophers argue. As a writer, I try to avoid holes in the narrative, respect the rules of logic, most of the time, except when a contradiction serves a useful rhetorical purpose. Naturally, of course, it's part of writing well. I may not always succeed, but at least I try. But as far as you philosophers are concerned, I'm not interested in following your made-up rules. Contradict me all you like. I'm not arguing with you. Sometimes I will make assertions that I do not back up with any evidence at all. The horror of it. For example, in the first chapter I stated that when Diogenes told Alexander to get out of my sunshine, he didn't even blink. How could I possibly have known that? To the best of my knowledge, there is no historical report of Diogenes not blinking during that fateful exchange, supposing it really did occur. And even if a sharp-eyed witness had kept a close eye on the famed dogged philosopher the whole time, a blink would have gone unnoticed and unrecorded if the observer had blinked at exactly the same moment. The legendary British movie actor Michael Caine, in an interview once, stated that the first rule of being a cinema tough guy is not blinking. When the camera has you up close and you blink, you look like Bambi, he said. So that's how I know, or believe I know, the character of Diogenes. If anyone had blinked, I like to think it would have been Alexander in sheer astonishment. I'm not making a truth claim, to use the philosopher's stilted vernacular. I'm being rhetorical. Get it? But how can this book not be philosophy if it is about philosophy? History of Ideas, when it looks at philosophers and their thought, does not thereby become philosophy, although of course it can be if the writer so chooses. Neither is a work of psychology that looks at the peculiar mindset of philosophers, with the same proviso. I'm remembering now the fascinating book by Ben-Ami Scharfstein, The Philosophers, Their Lives and the Nature of Their Thought, 1980. It's a great book. You should see it. Read it. Then again, I'm not really interested in the questions of demarcation. I'm just explaining to you, the reader, what to expect, as well as what not to expect. Am I new? Or very, very old? Where are the other members of my tribe? Why do I seem to be alone out here? That's a tough one to answer. Only a few years ago I wrote in my Filofax notebook, quote, I've been doing this so long I've almost forgotten how to write something that isn't a sales pitch. Unquote. Back then, as I explained, I called myself a sophist. And I believe that to be true. It was not an altogether happy time for me. Call it my identity crisis, if you like. But I was also beginning to wake up to the truth about my situation. Quote, maybe that's just my idealistic illusion, as if there could be a way to write and not be selling something, if only yourself. Truth, what is that? Pilate asked before he hurried away. I was sold the idea of truth. I knew that the truth was far away, but it could be reached with persistent effort, being true to oneself. Unquote. I am true to myself, and I always will be. A case could be made that I am still a sophist in the Protagorean mould. Yes, I believe in the reality of values, but not in the way that you mean. I hold that a thing has value, objective value, because I value it and only insofar as I value it. Man is the measure, and I am that man. To my mind, there is no other conceivable standard. Max Stirner would have approved. With equal justice, you could put me in the Pyrrhonian school of skeptics. For every argument, there is an equally compelling counter-argument. I truly believe that. I have taken Pyrrho's advice to heart. That is why I no longer put my trust in arguments. Rhetoric, the skills of the sophist, is my only useful tool, my only reliable weapon, in the face of questions and problems that are simply too great for reason and logic. That's really the whole point of this book, so I will be coming back to it again and again. All that remains is to express, to move others so that they can see what you see. Help them, push them gently, or twist their arms if necessary, or even beat them senseless with words and more words and more words. Don't despise me. I could be the future. You may have less time than you think. Your time might have already run out, or not. Or, just maybe, we can join forces. I don't deny the value of what you do in your eyes. I value the fact that we value things differently. And that's not sophistry. At the end of the day, there surely is something we can agree on. We will have to pull together if we want to stand up against the ever-increasing trivialization of human life, the destruction of everything we once believed in, the coming idiocracy. I don't know if you saw the movie Idiocracy, but the premise is very scary, and half believable, that stupid people will breed more quickly than smart people, and eventually will be swamped with loads and loads and loads and loads of stupid people. And if you are taking a pessimistic view, looking at the world of social media and everything today, and politics and what's happening to it, it's already happening. The idiocracy is already upon us. But my concern is with ultimate questions. That's really the point. That's right. We'll be hammering home. Philosophy is, the methods of philosophy are inadequate to deal with ultimate questions. And what philosophers do is they just turn aside from them. They ignore them. They say, well, let's get on with something we can do. And to my mind, that's just a total betrayal. So that's really my position. That's the view. What I will be harping on about. So you kind of don't have to see any more of these videos if you got the point and you think, okay, all right, I get it. Doesn't grip me though. That's fine. But I will endeavour to explain why I am so gripped. Why these questions move me so strongly. And maybe they will move you too. That's all for today. Bye.